Today, we're going to be addressing some of the concerns that have come up about the direction for the compliance team and the direction for the security orchestration category. I know both of our directions have a lot of overlap, and at least where we're headed in the short term, it appears that we're doing a lot of duplicative work. So today, I'm here with Sam Kerr, who's the product manager for the compliance team, and we're going to be talking about our direction and our strategy and how our two directions are going to come together over the long term to provide an incredible amount of value for our users. Sam Kerr is going to describe his short-term strategy. I'll go over my short-term strategy, and then we'll describe where we're headed in the long run.
All right, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a capability the compliance group has been working on, which we're calling custom compliance framework pipelines. And really the problem we're trying to address with this is we've realized that there are compliance teams that need to ensure that certain steps are done as part of a commit or a merge request for every single project in their organization. Maybe that is something to do about controlling data, making sure people sign off on it, or a job is run. And traditionally, the way that they've dealt with this is someone has to manually go in, edit every single project, which is incredibly time consuming and error prone. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll walk you all through something that we're going to be releasing in 13.11, which is here in a couple weeks. All right, so what I'm sharing right now is the group settings for a group that has a number of different compliance frameworks defined for it. For this demo, we're going to talk through this one here, which is called Sam's framework. And so if we go into editing this and take a look at it, you can see you can add a name, you can add a description, but the thing I really want to point out and draw your attention to is this compliance pipeline configuration location. And what this is saying is that for any project that has this compliance framework label, Sam's framework applied to it, this pipeline will run automatically and override and extend any pipeline that's defined in the individual project. And so let's go take a look at what this will actually look like from both the compliance perspective as well as the development project perspective. If we switch to this project, Sam's compliance, you'll see this is our new GitLab CI YAML file. And this is what we would envision a compliance team creating, where they would have that single source of truth to say, this is our compliance policy, the steps that have to be run on every merge request or pipeline or commit. And in this example, we have a compliance required build job that runs in the build stage, a compliance required test job that runs in the test stage. And then it ends by including the pipeline configuration that the development team for that project has defined. So now that we've looked at the compliance perspective, let's go look at what it would look like from a developer's perspective. And for this one, we'll look at Sam's app. This might be a project where the application is defined, but you'll note it's been marked with this Sam's framework compliance label. So if we go and look at the pipeline definition file for this project, we'll see all it has is a single job, just a job that says it's building the app. So let's go look at what the pipeline for this project will look like since that framework label has been applied. And you'll see that even though we only defined one job in that pipeline configuration in this project, the compliance jobs were automatically added and are also running in the pipeline. This is incredibly powerful because the developer didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to understand anything about the compliance requirements of the organization. And the compliance team doesn't have to worry about making sure every developer project has been updated correctly. The compliance framework applies that single policy as code sort of approach to every project that's been marked with the compliance framework label.
On our side, we have many of the same problems that Sam Kerr described for compliance teams, although we're focused on security teams. And one key difference is that they're focused almost exclusively on requiring scans to be run or requiring certain actions to be taken afterwards based off of the results of those scans. So it's a more narrow set of use cases for the security teams than the compliance teams. Because of that, we wanted to provide a really clean user experience. And we're creating an if this, then that logic that basically has rules and actions specifically around those use cases. It's not as wide open and unconstrained as allowing users to just do anything with their GitLab CI.yaml file, but it does button it up into a really clean user experience. So just to share where we're going in the short term, We're actually taking a very similar approach to what the compliance team is doing by letting you link a security policy project to your development project. This provides for separation of duties where the permissions and management can be handled separately for that separate security policy project. And again, it provides that separation of duties between the developers and the security team. In that security policy project, users can put a YAML file that defines the policies that they want to have run. For example, when a pipeline runs, I want to require a DAST job to run with a certain DAST scan and site profile parameters. That actually runs after the CI YAML file executes as a separate post-processing job. So it ensures that that scan will execute regardless of the contents of the GitLab ci.yaml file. It means that there's no way that the developers of this project can do anything that would break or cause this policy to not run. Essentially, what it does is it puts it totally into separate process. You could even specify DAST disabled true in your GitLab CI file, and it still would run that DAST scan because it's actually executing it at the very end of everything after the GitLab ci.yaml file has been parsed and executed. In the long run, we want to take this experience and provide a cleaner UI around it. So our next iteration will be to provide a listing of the policies that have been created. You can still edit that associated policy project, but this will basically be a view of those YAML policies that have been defined in that space. And we have the benefit of being able to do this because it is a little bit more constrained to specific policies so that we can parse those out without dealing with all of the complexity and the numerous options that are available in the full GitLab ci.yaml file. So in here, when users create a new policy, it will automatically create that new project for them. If it's not already created, it'll link it up and it will give them an experience where they can directly manage those policies as code.
So hopefully after seeing what both of our groups are working on, it's becoming a little bit more clear how some of this work is complementary rather than duplicative. If we zoom out a little bit and look at how both of us are approaching it, we're taking slightly different approaches to ultimately end up at the same place together. The approach that we've taken in compliance is really around allowing full customization, full power of a GitLab CI YAML file to be applied to a project. Anything you can do inside of a pipeline, you can do inside of a compliance framework pipeline. From the other end, with security and policies, we realize that there are some common sort of scans, common steps that our users want to be able to do. And so that if this, then that sort of approach is really going to give them a lot of the power to easily be able to create these sort of policies. And so how we see these two in the future merging together is that you don't use one or the other, but rather you would use both depending on what sort of use case you have. Being able to use the compliance framework labels, where I showed the one where it was saying Sam's framework, will allow being able to specifically define where and when policies should be applied. If this, then that style rules will help address many of the common cases that our users will have, while at the same time giving them that full flexibility of a pipeline definition file enables the different teams using it to do whatever they need to be able to do if one of our if this then that rules doesn't provide the flexibility they need.
So we have a prototype of our vision for the end state. This would be a group level policy that I'm managing, where as part of this policy, you could come in and define which labels you want to have this apply to. So this would be leveraging the project level compliance framework labels that the compliance team is working on to specify the types of projects inside of the group that this policy should be applied to. And then we take this nice if this then that style editor where you can say, if a pipeline is run against the main branch or the default branch, or perhaps you want to execute this on a schedule for a daily or weekly, regular schedule. And then you can come down and you can add any number of actions that you want to have take effect, including the ability to execute a CI script. So this brings the work that the compliance team is doing into the user experience that the security orchestration team is doing, where you can link to any arbitrary CI YAML file, or even just start putting in a custom block of YAML that should be run as part of that pipeline or as part of that on that schedule, so that you can enforce that to run but you still get the nice, clean user experience that's being worked on by the security orchestration team. Hopefully this demo is useful to you. We would love to capture any feedback that you may have to offer. Our initial releases for both of these are coming out in the 13.11 release. The policy editor work will be behind a feature flag, so we would love to have anyone who's interested turn that on and send us some feedback. We'll be providing a link to feedback issues and instructions on how to provide feedback here in the description of the video.